It is Thursday, December 10th. I'm Sam Cedar.
And I'm Lucy Steiner. Which one of these stories will you be talking about today?
Intensive care units are filling up with coronavirus patients across the country, which means that some of the sick people aren't going to get the care they need. Meanwhile, Texas Republicans want the United States Supreme Court to overturn the presidential election in 4 other states. Donald Trump wants every Republican in Congress to sign on to the case. And lastly, New York's massive state pension fund is divesting from fossil fuel companies. Experts say it could push more major investors to follow suit.
You're listening to Majority.fm's AM Quickie, and these are the stories you need to know.
The death panels are coming. More than 1/3 of Americans live in areas where hospitals are running critically short of intensive care beds. This according to federal data analyzed by the New York Times. And 1 in 10 Americans lives in an area where intensive care beds are either completely full or fewer than 5% of beds are available. At these levels, maintaining existing standards of care for the sickest patients may be impossible. The new data shows that some areas like Amarillo, Texas, Coral Gables, Florida, and Troy, Michigan, are seeing rates of serious illness from COVID-19 that approach the levels seen in New York City during the worst weeks of the spring. Political leaders in many states are ramping up measures to try and slow the spread, this according to the Times. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham of New Mexico, where ICUs are full across the state, is expected to soon announce that hospitals can ration care based on who is most likely to survive. Survival rates from the disease have improved as doctors have learned which treatments work, this according to the Times, but hospital shortages could reverse those gains, risking the possibility of increasing mortality rates once again. There is some evidence physicians are already limiting care, according to Thomas Tsai, an assistant professor of health policy at Harvard University. For the last several weeks, the rate at which COVID-19 patients are going to hospitals has started decreasing. That suggests that there may be some rationing of care as hospitals remain full. Best way we can ease the burden on hospitals is to stop the spread. So stay home, or at the very least, mask up. No matter how hard he scrubs, the stink of failure clings to Donald Trump. Reuters reports that an attempt by the Texas Republicans to have Trump's election loss upended by the U.S. Supreme Court is almost certain to fail. Texas on Tuesday sued Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin in a case brought directly to the high court. The suit asks justices to throw out the voting results in those 4 states. It argues that changes made by the states to expand mail-in voting amid the pandemic were unconstitutional. According to Reuters, election law experts called the lawsuit laughable. Rebecca Green, a professor at William and Mary Law School in Virginia, told Reuters that Texas does not have legal standing to challenge how other states handled the election. She said, quote, "It is so outlandish. It's totally contrary to how our Constitution mandates that elections be run. The idea that a state could complain about another state's processes is just absurd." End quote. Then why do it? Well, the Texas suit is being brought by Attorney General Paxton. Yes, the same one who is being investigated by the FBI. Look for a pardon much? Meanwhile, a Republican congressman who filed an amicus brief in the lawsuit said yesterday that Trump is anxiously awaiting a list of lawmakers who support the effort. The Washington Post reports that Trump called Congressman Mike Johnson of Louisiana yesterday morning. Trump asked Johnson to request that all Republican members of the House and Senate join their brief. In a letter to colleagues, Johnson said they're not seeking to litigate particular allegations of fraud, no doubt because the allegations don't exist. Rather, the Post reports, they are urging the court to conduct a careful, timely review of the virtually non-existent allegations. Seeing as how the court just declined to hear another of Trump's baseless election complaints, that'd be a big surprise if they accept. Finally, the Post reports the Nevada Supreme Court unanimously ruled on Tuesday night to reject an appeal from Trump's campaign to overturn the state's election results. What's the word I'm looking for? Oh, yes. Loser. Do you know any rich people? Well, you should let them know that the world's wealthy will need to reduce their carbon footprints by a factor of 30 to help curb climate change. The figure comes from findings published yesterday by the United Nations Environment Program and reported in the Washington Post. Currently, the emissions attributable to the most rich 1% of all people count for more than double those of the poorest 50%. Shifting that balance will require swift and substantial lifestyle changes, according to the Post, including decreases in air travel. But there are also changes that only institutions, not individuals, can make, and some are. According to the New York Times, one of the world's largest and most influential investors, New York State's pension fund, will drop many of its fossil fuel stocks in the next 5 years. It will also sell its shares in other companies that contribute to global warming by 2040. This according to the state comptroller. With $226 billion in assets, New York's fund holds sway over other major investors. Decision to divest from fossil fuels could help push global markets away from oil and gas companies. This according to experts and activists. Speaking to the Times, 1,246 institutions have committed to shedding their investments in fossil fuels, according to the New York Times. 60,000 individuals have also divested. The total combined value of their portfolios, $14.1 trillion. The movement to dump fossil fuel stocks began as an effort to make an ethical statement and to cast polluters as pariahs, much like the push to divest from apartheid-era South Africa. But as the market shifts, coal and increasingly oil and gas have become riskier investments. It was bound to happen eventually. Hopefully, it won't be too late.
And now for some quicker quickies.
Quicker quickie.
NBC News reports that immigrant and child advocates are increasing pressure on President-elect Joe Biden. They want him to commit to allowing parents separated from their children at the border by the Trump administration to return to the U.S. to be reunited. Biden has said he would establish a task force dedicated to reuniting separated families, but his transition team has yet to reveal detailed plans. I think it's time to get on that, Joe. Trump is facing a rebellion among congressional Republicans over his threat to veto the annual Pentagon spending bill. This according to Politico. A House vote on Tuesday night suggests Trump's veto will be overridden, which hasn't happened to him before. Well, there's a first time for everything, and hopefully this will be a last time for Donald Trump. Cuba said this week it has attracted $1.9 billion worth of foreign investment over the past year, despite tighter U.S. sanctions. Reuters reports that Cuba has reduced obstacles to foreign investment. For example, only projects regarding extraction of natural resources and public services will now require a majority Cuban stakeholder. What would Che say? Federal Trade Commission and more than 40 states accused Facebook yesterday of becoming a monopoly by buying up its rivals to illegally squash competition. This according to the New York Times. Prosecutors called for Facebook to shed Instagram and WhatsApp and for new restrictions on future deals. Great. Now, when do we start redistributing Mark Zuckerberg's personal fortune?
Quicker quickie.
That's all for today's AM Quickie. Join us this afternoon live at noon for the Majority Report. We've got a couple of guests, one of them, President of the Flight Attendants Union, Sarah Nelson. Check it out.